New survey, Trump spent tens of millions against trans, won swing voters and the election. A significant post-election poll reveals how misinformation about transgender issues swayed swing voters in Donald Trump's favor during the 2024 elections. Trump and the GOP spent more than $35 million to convince voters that schools were supporting trans health care and surgery. Ads claimed that Harris supported taxpayer trans surgery for prisoners. On the day after the election, MSNBC's Morning Joe host focused on trans issues being a key issue for defeat. Joe Scarborough discussed the Harris attack ad about her support of trans surgery being paid by taxpayers for prisoners. Scarborough said, quote, "I'm telling you, that ad had a bigger impact than any ad that ran," end quote. Other hosts discussed the policy was actually created by Trump's administration. Critics point out Harris was reluctant to take on the falsehoods of the Trump attacks. LGBTQ advocates said in the first days after the election that Morning Joe was wrong and was attacking the trans community and others. And the other issues were the real election defeat. Today's new poll released by Blueprint suggests that swing voters were highly influenced and believed those deceptive ads, and that helped to decide the election. The Blueprint poll found that undecided voters who made last-minute decisions overwhelmingly supported Trump, with 52% backing him compared to just 38% for Kamala Harris. Central to their choice was the belief in misleading narratives about transgender rights. Among Trump swing voters that made their decision in the last week, 83% believed Harris supported taxpayer-funded transgender surgeries for undocumented prisoners, a policy rooted in constitutional rights and crediting her campaign. Similarly, 77% thought Harris backed minor transitioning genders without parental consent, another falsehood. Trump's campaign capitalized on these narratives, though through hateful ads targeting the trans community and misrepresenting Harris's stance on transgender issues and other policies. Other misconceptions included claims that Harris wanted to ban gas-powered cars, allow abortion up to birth, and unilaterally enforce reparations. None of these are positions Harris endorsed, but Trump's rhetoric and targeted ads reinforced these falsehoods. AI-generated videos spread lies about her and her running mate. One fake video of a Haitian man claimed the man voted twice in two different counties in Georgia, and it was later discovered to be fake content created by Russian-influenced actors. Another was that Governor Walz had a gay relationship with a student. The most significant finding in that poll was that swing voters in battleground states making a decision in the last week favored Trump significantly over Harris. These swing voters said the number one issue against Harris was over trans issues. It was a great reason for their vote, according to these swing voters, than the economy, immigration, abortion, and other issues. This helps explain why the GOP and Trump spent so much money on anti-LGBTQ messages. It is now clear the election has helped us realize the power of misinformation in shaping public opinion, particularly on LGBTQ rights. As the community continues fighting for equality, the spread of falsehoods highlights the urgent need for fact-based advocacy and voter education. Wow, that's a lot to unpack. And I'm glad that Alex is on the panel today, because Alex, you just wrote something that's going to come out next week pertaining to exactly our story tonight.
Specifically talking about this idea of blaming the trans community for the Democrats' loss. So, you know, I was noticing with like this particular poll, first off, the people that we call like undecided, that was about 7% that decided to vote in the last week. People forget the LGBTQ community is actually a very large voting bloc. We're actually about 7.6% of the adult population. For people that don't understand that, when attacking our community and saying, oh, the trans issue is the problem, we represent in Florida alone about 800,000 people that showed up to the polls, and nationally about over 11 million. And people don't realize from last cycle to this cycle, Harris outperformed Biden by 22 points with our community, only group that she did so well with. And I keep hearing, whether it be Democratic members of Congress, people talking like Morning Joe, you know, Joe Scarborough and Nima Brzezinski, I've had enough with the two of them. They should just stick at Mar-a-Lago for the rest of the year. But like, people that 22% shift represents 2.5 million voters nationally that went towards Harris. And people look at that, they come up with all these different answers trying to explain it. I'm like, well, if you look at the final vote count, she underperformed Biden by 5-6 million votes, which is far more than what Trump did and gained. And I end the piece with saying, you know, Harris didn't lose over trans issues. Harris lost because millions of voters looked at Harris and looked at Trump and decided neither of them were worth voting for. And trying to attack trans people at last minute It's terrible. You even look at that poll, other issues like the economy, were almost just as high as trans stuff. I don't think anyone looked at, when you asked them, like, oh, I care about the trans issue. You really care about the trans issue more than, like, if you think someone's going to help you with the economy? They didn't think either was going to help them.
Yeah. Scott?
So we're at a moment of real reckoning in the LGBT community.
That's
I mean,
for sure.
I've been on this show in the past a couple of years ago saying the wolf is at the door. We are headed into a 4-year period where I think we could be facing our own Holocaust. And as a politician and a former history teacher, I don't use that word lightly. Have no doubt that this administration is going to use the courts in ways we've never imagined. The only way we're going to survive as a community over the next 4 years or 8 years or more, I think Trump, by the way, dies in the White House, whether that's a year from now or 10 years from now. I do not think he leaves office ever again. We have to have some really hard conversations amongst ourselves. We have to talk about what issues work in our favor and what issues don't work in our favor. It means that we're going to have to be politically incorrect amongst ourselves to reach some common ground, because our message, I feel, as a community has been so broad. We've talked about so many different things, from the number of pronouns to the number of pride flags that there are now, to drag queens reading to kids. We have to stop now and have some conversations and say, what are our priorities? Because we as a community have to be able to identify. We're going to have to scale down, come together. If you're talking about gladiators, raise those shields and get ready to fight, because it's going to be merciless. I think, and this is just me speaking, I think gay marriages are not only going to be outlawed going forward, I think they're going to void them in retrospect. I think that's the depth of what we're facing. So we're going to have to talk amongst ourselves, talk about issues like this, and talk about other things in the community. And if I can just throw one little thing in there, I try not to be too preachy. I guess as a politician, sometimes you fall into that. I'm only going to preach to the queer white guys of a certain age, mine and up. I know we'd like to feel that we had done all of this fighting all of these years, and we should be allowed now to rest. Too bad.
Yeah.
That's not the hand we're dealt.
At all.
We have to fight harder than we ever have before, and we need to be there in support of other parts of that rainbow in this battle, because it is going to be incredibly difficult.
Trini?
I agree a lot with what you're saying. My feeling of, it's not just Trump. It's, if Trump dies, all his supporters are still here that feel the same way. And in my opinion, the rise of Trumpism and that ideology was fueled by the radical left. And I think that the radical left has left the average gay person. I do not feel that what I call the elite gays, many of the people that even sit at this table, that are involved in a lot of what's going on, that are doing great things, by the way. I don't want to condemn any of them. They're doing great things, but become very out of touch with the rest of the world, not realizing this is a complete bubble that we live in here, especially in South Florida. When it comes to the issues, Seth Moulton, Democratic congressman or Senate?
Massachusetts congressman.
Yeah. So that's in Massachusetts, right? He said, you know what, I don't think that trans women should be able to compete in women's sports. All right. You can debate whether that is, there's good arguments on both sides, in my opinion, but to immediately come out and say, nope, sorry, you've got to take it back, we're resigning from your camp. All of this backlash over something that is what the majority of this country believes in, and for a good reason. We do separate men's and women's sports because of male and female bodies. We know that there are differences in there. So for a variety of reasons, you may be on that train of like, no, we should include them or not. But at the very least, you have to say, I understand where you're coming from. And, that's not where I lie on that spectrum, but I'm not going to demonize you for this. And I think that our elite gay community LGBTQ plus community has been demonizing people, and I have been on the end of this for the past 4 years of trying to stand up for our community. I'm probably, when they were talking about trans issues, about being, a major reason why Kamala lost the election, I am on conservative media sites every single day. PragerU is one of the ones that I'm on. It's a complete trash propaganda site, but I believe that instead of censorship, more speech is what we need to counteract all the fake stories that come out. So they decided that instead of running conservative issues, they're going to run trans and drag every single day. And they have been doing that for the past 5 months. And I am on that site every day standing up for trans community and the drag community, informing everybody you are being misled. This is less than 1% of the population. The reason why you think it's a huge issue is because the conservatives are putting it in front of you, making it seem like this because they think you're stupid. And I do that every day, and I get called every name in the book every day because of that. And I think that our community, we do need to do a better job of scaling back some of the things that are opinions. And when we say, it's an opinion, whether it's, your definition of a woman or a man, whatever, let people have their opinions, let people have their religious beliefs. Say that you disagree with it, but you can't demonize them for it, and just put out yours.
No, I absolutely disagree, because
Bobby?
when you I don't mind that you have your religious beliefs. So obey your religion. But when you're trying to force your religious belief onto my life because of what you believe, which is what Project 2025 is trying to do. They're trying to push Christian nationalism. So that's basically anything that is less than white extreme evangelical beliefs, deserves a representation in this country. I have a problem with it. I can understand some of the trans athletic issues that has come out, but I'm not going to we are facing an opposition that literally, Sarah McBride, the first trans person going to Congress, is literally getting banned from her bathroom before she even got sworn in. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, literally said, "Yes, we are going to ban her from
the women's bathroom."
From the women's bathroom, because that's just how much we hate trans people.
Yeah.
These people are not to be reasoned with, because their hatred is their only rationale.
Alex, do you think that Kamala made a mistake by not addressing all these falsehoods that were being
Oh yeah,
said?
people forget, in October she actually was interviewed on NBC News, and she was asked to talk about trans issues. She refused. She even said, her exact words were roughly around something about she didn't want to answer, and the reporter's like, but they're trying to she mentioned that they're trying to spend all this money on me to define me, and the reporter's like, but I'm trying to ask you to define yourself. And she refused.
She wouldn't.
She was not the first Democrat to do that. The Democratic candidate in Texas said he didn't want boys in girls sports. Well, that didn't win him the election. He still lost. Seth Moulton, he's being attacked by the Salem Democrats in Massachusetts, because at the end of the day, when you go, the Democrats that are attacking the trans issue stuff, you're attacking your base. You really can't, as I said, that 11 million, we will not have a chance of winning the general election if the LGBT community goes down to 50% votes Democrat, or doesn't show up. And that was the other thing. People didn't have a reason to show up this election. I worked for the party, and I almost didn't vote for a Democrat this cycle because she was getting her economic advice from the chief legal advisor of Uber, also her brother-in-law. And I'm like, Trump showed us enough that you don't want family in the middle of your White House, for the love of God.
Yeah.
And this is what she did. And, yes, it was a 90-day election, so that's also a whole other thing to get into. But you have to have a message, or as you said, you're going to hear nothing but this anti-social value stuff. And if you don't have a message as a candidate to run against that, people are just going to look at you and not want to.
I just want to clarify. I agree with you in what you just said, but what I'm talking about is when somebody says, I don't believe a trans woman is a woman, I believe that they're a man. Right. You can't reason with them and just say, no, you're stupid. You have to say, all right, well, if that's your belief, then fine, believe that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to legal issues, then,
we can't cancel ourselves. And that's, I think, what I'm hearing from you, and I totally agree with you on. I have trans friends who agree that trans females should not be competing
I hear it too, but they don't want to speak out.
But they don't want to say it because they're afraid of being canceled. And
Yeah.
I know, white guys of a certain age, white cis men, however you want to phrase it, who also disagree with some of the things that they hear coming from the younger generation, but are afraid to say something.
Yeah. No, I hear all the time
We've
from
all
older
been-
white men that are like, okay, we should have just left the acronym how it was. Why do we keep on adding letters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, and then you get the the trashing that I even saw at a public forum last week of white cis men, and then in the same literal sentence they say, "But we still need you to write your checks." When you're the one that's being asked to write that check, how often do you hear that? Look, we've been super politically correct amongst ourselves. I think there's not a shade of a type of flag or a gender or anything that we just didn't embrace and say, yeah, that's part of our story. We can't afford to do that anymore. We can, if we stay politically correct amongst ourselves and don't have some of the hard conversations, we'll never gel the message to have a stronger message going forward.
But those conversations must be had. Exactly, just like Trini said. If in our own community we have, we don't all agree, right? But to fight, we all got to figure out what that common ground is and go from there.
Right.
Can I say one last thing about Kamala Harris? So people know that I'm no fan of Kamala Harris, but that's the best that we had at that moment. So she was put in a very difficult situation when it comes to trans issues because she knew that that is a hot button issue and that she would likely lose the election if she were to continue talking about that and be as progressives want her. And it reminds me of Obama. Obama, you cannot convince me that he did not believe in gay marriage when he first ran.
But he couldn't.
But he couldn't say that because he knew he would lose. And so it was more important to win, make change, and then, change her opinion later. And that's what she was with. That's what she was doing this time. So I don't fault her for that.
All right, guys, we have to move on. We have to move on, Alex. I'm sorry.
I understand.
And trust me, this isn't the last time we're going to talk about this. Okay, so.